many of y'all are at least somewhat excited that this is the first official actual Bible study we have done since, what's 4 days before, so March 11th, right? The first official, other than doing our Feed the Dog series that we did on Zoom and stuff like that. This is the first in-person, like actual, we're learning new content, we're talking about something different, we're not just recapping something. And, I think it's, I'm excited about it because it gave me a chance to get back into somewhat of a routine as far as starting to study. Are you hot, Tracy? I am hot. Because they made me turn the air down because they were freezing. Yeah, you probably are. But, it's one of those things, and this is a concept that I'm really looking forward to in session 10. So, like we talked about, the first several parts of the book of James is talking to us about how we're supposed to live our life as Christians, and when we think we're doing well, it's going to point out those things that we're not doing so well in. And session 10 is actually one that hit very, very home to me, especially over the past couple of days while I began to study it. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the end. But I'm excited about the session because it's very practical. It's something that's simple, something as simple as, budgeting your money and being good with your finance and being good with those things that God has blessed you with is some of the first steps in being able to put yourself in a position where God can use you, where God can use you to the fullest extent that he wanted to use you with. And as Christians, we're commanded to live our life in a way that we're never oppressing. We're not looking down on somebody else or putting too much pressure on somebody else because maybe they don't have the same resources we have. As Christians, we're supposed to be helping those that are in need rather than saying, oh, well, I'm better than that person. And many of us have been in that position where you're like, oh, well, I'm too good for that, right? Even if you don't want to answer that question, you've probably thought it. I have. Now, don't y'all start, judging me or anything like that, but I have. I've been there. And so those of you that have your Bible, or if you've got the Bible app on your phone, go ahead and open up to the book of James, chapter 5, and we are really going to focus on the first 6 verses. In that, I want us to understand that the environment that we live in today is very toxic. And by that, I mean the things that the media is breathing into us, the things that television or social media is influencing, they're toxic. And they cause us to not really flourish the way that God wants us to. So starting in verse 1, come now you rich. And before we get any further, let's stop 1 second. A lot of you are like, okay, come now you rich. I'm not rich, so you're obviously not going to be talking to me all night long. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Here's the crazy part. I didn't know this, but statistically, if your household, the household that you live in, makes a combined income of more than $22,000 a year, you are in the top 2% of all the people in the world. So you say, well, I'm not rich. Well, if your combined household income is more than $22,000 for the entire household, you're in the wealthiest 2% of people in the entire world. So yeah, the Bible is talking to you. It's also talking about more than just money. It's talking about the things that God blesses you with. So as we read on, come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of your laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have flattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. Now, before everybody starts panicking, I'm not getting ready to pass like an offering plate or anything like that. We're really not talking about money in that aspect. That's for a completely different day. You know, what we're talking about is, how do you view money? How do you view not just money, but maybe possessions, things that belong to you, maybe things that you want versus things that you have. So don't be afraid. We're not going to pass an offering plate around and ask y'all to give money. We're going to do that on Wednesday, right? We're going to wait. No, I'm not kidding. You can laugh. You're allowed to. Ha ha. Y'all forgot how funny I was, didn't you? So what we're going to see in what James is saying in verses 1 through 6 is actually something that James is arguing, but it's also echoed, or it's actually echoing what Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. And so the first being that money is dangerous. Money itself is dangerous. And if you're in your workbook, that's that first fill in the blank right there, right? Money is dangerous. It's not that money is bad, okay? Don't mistake that. It's not that money is bad. It's not even a bad thing to have money. But money itself is dangerous. Think of fire. Fire can be a very good thing, right? You can use fire to stay warm if you're cold. You can use fire to cook things. But don't forget that fire can also burn down and destroy everything that you own. So think about it in that aspect. It's good. It can be used for good things. Same thing with fire. It can be great for cooking as long as you keep it under control. It can be great for heating your house as long as you don't catch the entire house on fire, right? So think about money in that aspect. It's dangerous, but it's dangerous mainly because the heart itself is deceptive. Would you believe that your heart is deceptive? What you think. And playing around with the dangers of money, and you end up loving money, you get to the point that money itself consumes you, then you need to be careful, because the love of money itself is deadly. Deadly. The love of money is deadly. So money is dangerous, the heart is deceptive, the love of money is deadly, and the last thing that James is arguing here is the fact that only the gospel can deliver us from that love of money that is dangerous, that can lead to death. Not only spiritual death, but it can lead to physical death. People that are trying and taking risk to do more and more things. The suicide rate in the United States, when they took a poll of, and of course, I'm not sure how they come up with these numbers, because you never really know why somebody has committed suicide. But when they've spoke to the family, they talk about tensions that they had, and 9 times out of 10, that tension was because of money. Most divorces in America are over money. They're not over infidelity or anything like that. They are over money. And most of the time, it's not a lack of money, but it's how they use that money. How do they view money itself? And when I talk about toxicity in our culture, I want you to look at and consider something. In 2014, Media Dynamic Inc. actually did a survey. And what they were trying to figure out is how much media input does an average adult get per day. And so in 1995, the average adult got 2.5 hours worth of media per day. 2.5 hours worth of media consumption, whether that be radio ads, TV ads, billboards, whatever. And then in 2014, it had jumped to almost 6.9 hours. Can you imagine what it is today? They haven't done another study, probably because they don't want to know the results. But you have this media that is constantly bombarding you, and you're constantly seeing, and most of them are advertisements for things you don't have. Another study was done actually just a few months ago, right before the COVID stuff, and while media consumption has increased over major platforms and radios and stuff like that, but 5 years ago, a lot of the TV ads and the radio ads began to drop drastically. Anybody want to take a wild guess of why, like, media on TV and radio ads started dropping? Hulu and Netflix. Because for a small fee, you can upgrade to Hulu Premium and you don't have to watch commercials anymore. Or you can do Pandora Premium and not have to listen to radio ads anymore. Ad-free listening, ad-free music, right? But don't think that means we're not getting that media. All of a sudden, social media began to boost. You can't scroll through social media without seeing an ad of something or whatever it might be, and you're constantly being told that this is something I don't have. And the idea behind it, and if they're good at marketing, is to market it in a way that you say, I want this, I need this, I have to have, right? So this study came out and said that the average teenager sees 360 ads per day, whether that be a commercial on Hulu because your parents are too cheap to buy Hulu Premium, right? Or an ad you have to watch on YouTube, which has gotten worse recently. It's like I feel like everything you do on YouTube now, you got to watch an ad. Whether it be these car wraps. Let me tell you a story about a buddy of mine I went to high school with. His name is Rick Vines. Jordan knows who this guy is. About 6 years ago, he came up to me and he said, I'm getting ready to wrap all of our trucks in highlighter yellow and say Vines Plumbing. I said, you are an idiot. And I'm eating those words today because I don't have to read the name on the side of that truck when it's 5 trucks in front of me. I know that it's a Vines Plumbing truck because it's brand recognition, right? So 365 times a day, you're being sold this idea of it's something you need, or it's something that you want, or you're not going to be happy unless you get it. And it just invites you into this realm of being discontent, not happy with what you have, not finding pleasure in the things you have, but focusing on the things you don't have. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am extremely guilty of this. Tracy can tell you exactly what I was doing last night while laying in bed. No, I was looking at Mustangs last night, particularly. But I'm like, ooh, I'd love to get another Mustang. Tracy, we need a boat. And so I will go on Facebook Marketplace, and I look at stuff that I have no business looking at because I can't afford it right now, nor do I need it. But it's because we're seeing all this stuff of, okay, well, I heard somebody say not long ago, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a boat. You know? And so it's things like that we're constantly just being in this toxic realm of discontent. The environment sows us into a perpetual desire to get and keep and to have, and it can never satisfy us. Think of a treadmill. You get on a treadmill. I hate running on a treadmill. I would rather go out and run because I have a starting point and an end point. When you run on a treadmill, where are you going? Absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. It's like being on that hamster wheel. You're running and you're running and you're running and you're not getting anywhere. And that's what this environment is telling us. Think about an iPhone. You're like, I got to have the new iPhone 11. What happens the day after you get the iPhone 11? The iPhone 12 is getting released. Oh, I got to have the iPhone 12, right? You're never happy. It's this constant, never-ending cycle of, I have to have this. And then when you get this, you think that I'm going to get this and I'm going to be happy and I'm going to settle down. No, because then you get the phone and they're like, oh, I need the $40 case to go with it. Oh. Go ahead.
I even think about just like now, like in the summertime, like we go to the water park one day. Oh, that was great. Then the next day, like that satisfied you, but then the next day you're like, oh,
It's a new day.
right, it's a new day. Like you're almost never satisfied, not just necessarily like material stuff, but just doing stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. This is also going to talk about like your time and how you value your time as well. The lie we give ourselves is that we need more of what we actually already have. We convince ourselves that we need more of something that we actually already have. And by that, I mean we need a newer phone. I already have a car that gets me from point A to point B, but I want a nicer car. I want nicer wheels for my car. I have a computer that works just fine, but I need the new MacBook because it's going to do this. Right? Don't you keep your mouth shut. Yes, right? So it's just that constant desire of always wanting more, because what does culture tell us? Culture tells us that you should never be satisfied. You should constantly be like getting something new. You get locked into a phone. I mean, like the new iPhone, well, I say the new, when Tracy and I got our new iPhone XS Max, right? They were $1,300. Do you realize if you're doing the payments the way they do it, it gets you locked in for like 2 years. But they send you a letter at about 1 year and says, hey, if you want to trade it in and only pay this much more, you can get the new one, right? It's constantly being told that you need the newer, the better, the best, the greatest out there. Your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded. So what would make all of our wealth and all of our valuables, our clothes, just be moth-eaten? And you know what it means by moth-eaten, right? You know how like if you put clothes, like you store them away because you're not using them, and you stick them in the attic and then you take them out, they have holes in them because moths have eaten them. I don't know if anybody's ever had that problem, right? But what can cause that to happen? This is where you're allowed to talk. Go ahead, Tracy.
So they're just sitting there not being used.
Yeah.
You forget about them.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like this guy I knew one time. He hounded his wife for a long time. So like, I want a remote control helicopter. I want a drone. And then he gets it, right? I know for a fact that guy has not even charged the batteries to that drone in almost 8 months. But he had to have it because he was going to. Now, granted, he does use it and he makes some use out of it. And he got a really good deal on it, but it's just sitting there. And it's something that he thought, if I get this, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have so much fun with it. And he did for about 2 days. He had a ton of fun with it until he crashed it and then had to buy a bunch of parts for it again, right? But we start to see, how James answers this question when you get to the second part of verse 3. You have laid up your treasures in the last days. You lay them up. You just set them there. These things that you thought were so important, and they're just trophies now. What good is it really doing you to sit there? And then you get to the point of like, okay, well, if I sell this, I could buy this because this will make me happy. Right? But you lay it up. And so James begins to continue talking, and the biggest thing that he lands on is the fact that money is so dangerous because you've trusted in the wrong thing. You've trusted in the wrong thing. You've thought that this thing is going to make me happy. That this money over here is going to make me happy, or this new iPhone or this new iPad or whatever is going to make me happy. And so you've trusted in that. And what you have to realize that when everything begins to fall apart and everything else is wrong, you've put your hope in the wrong place. There's nothing there. You know, when your world starts falling apart, that drone sitting on your shelf in your closet isn't doing you any good. Right? When your parents get a divorce or somebody in the family is dying or whatever, that iPad you've had to have, it's not worth anything in that time. So you're putting your trust into material possessions, into things that you think are going to happen, and you think that these things are going to calm your anxieties and say, if I can get this, I'm not going to worry about this, or if I can have enough money, I'm not going to worry about this, or I'm not going to stress about this, but yet we're trusting in that thing to fulfill part of us. And it doesn't work that way. You know, Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapters, I think 5 through about 7, he kind of echoes this, and he almost, if you take that part and you take this part of James and put them side by side, they're almost very identical in what they're portraying. And so looking at Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 19, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And we've all heard that verse 21 many times. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So there's two things happening that both James and Jesus are trying to teach us out of this text. And first off, money and what we do with it kind of measures and kind of reveals where our heart really is. It's kind of telling us that this is what we find important. And it's not a time really for other people to look at you because they don't necessarily know what you make or what you have or how much money your family has. This is a time for you to kind of evaluate yourself and how do you view money? How do you view those material possessions? And what can you do to kind of counteract that toxic culture that tells us you have to have and have and have and have and have and have? And culture doesn't tell us anything about giving. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. The next fill in the blank there is your wallet is a gracious gift from God that helps you understand what's actually going on in you. If you look at your wallet or you look at your bank statement, those of you that might have a checking account or something like that, I guarantee if you pulled up mine and Tracy's checking account right now, I would say 7 out of every 10 transactions are food related. Would you agree that that's probably pretty close? Even if that's a simple candy bar at the gas station or a Mellow Yellow or something like that at the gas station, you know, it's almost all food related. And that wallet or your bank account is a good way for you to evaluate what's important to you. What's important to Tracy? Chick-fil-A, right? It's food. But you can see that, and it's like I said, it's not so other people can externally measure your level of generosity, but it's for you to be able to look at yourself and just say, you know, you might drive the nicest car, your family might have the biggest house, you might have the nicest clothes, and yet your family might be the most generous people in the world. A lot of times it's not bad to have nice things. So don't hear me wrong on that. But there's also people out there that have the nicest car, have the house that all of our houses together could fit inside, and yet don't care about this person over here. Right? So it's a way for you to evaluate what you're looking at. It's easy for us to believe, at times that you're awesome or you're better than somebody else. You have that mentality when people ask you, like, how are you doing with this? And you're like, I'm nailing it, right? I got this. No questions asked, right? And you think you're doing well, but you're not. And maybe you're saying, well, you're not talking to me because I don't have nice things, but I wish you were talking to my friend because my friend's parents just bought him a new truck, and I really don't like him because his parents bought him a new truck. They should have bought me a new truck, right? My parents won't buy me one. But it's talking about doing with what you have, not what you desire, not what culture tells you that you need. So you can run your mouth all you want and say, I love Jesus and I'm sold out for Jesus and Jesus radically changed my life and this is what Jesus did for me. And that's great. I hear you. But then Jesus is like, okay, well, let's go look at your wallet. Are you radically sold out for me? Or are you worried about you? Are you worried about what you want, what you desire? Where are you showing generosity? And so, once again, this isn't a place for others to judge us, but rather a way to kind of keep ourselves in check. And a second thing that James is saying that's really toxic is we use our wealth to create safety and to create a shield that buffers us from life's anxieties. We think if we can save money right now, we're going to be better off down the road, and we don't have to worry about this. It's like this shield. Dave Ramsey, a Christian financial counselor, talks about females, and guys, y'all will learn this when you get married. Females have this thing called a safety gland. That they have this need to feel safe. And safe is more than just, safe in the aspect that nobody's going to break in the house tonight, but safe is that financial stability. That's saying that, hey, I can buy food and provide for my family. And so that's a real need, but we almost sometimes use wealth as an excuse or as, like I said, a buffer to keep us from worrying, when in all actuality, it almost does the complete opposite of that. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. And so I want to read two references for you real quick that not only do they go along with what James and what Jesus is both saying here, but they were kind of birthed from that. So Soren Kierkegaard, who was a Danish philosopher, said this: riches and abundance come hypocritically clad in sheep's clothing, pretending to be security against anxieties, and they become then the object of anxiety. They secure a man against anxieties just about as well as the wolf, which is out tending to the sheep. And then Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor during World War II, and I feel like me and this guy would get along pretty well, because he's a pastor, keep this in mind, and was not a fan of Hitler, which is a good thing. And so he planned to take over and to overthrow Hitler by any means necessary. So I'm like, I kind of like this guy, right? And he says, earthly goods deceive the human heart into believing that they give security and freedom from worry, but in truth, they are that cause of anxiety. And what really hit home with me on this, in Matthew Chandler in this series, kind of referenced something, and it kind of made me think of something. My very first car was a 1990 Jeep Cherokee. Okay, Tracy hated this car. Like, I'd pick her up from football games. I'd have to pick her up around the corner because she didn't want people seeing her get in this car, right? I would take that thing through the woods, and I would scratch it up. I laid it over sideways in a ditch one day. I had to get it. Let's put it this way. I loved my car, but I wasn't the guy parking at the back of Walmart because I didn't want somebody to park too close to me. You know what I'm saying? And then I got a new car. I wanted a new car, right? Years later, I got a Roush Mustang. I noticed every nick and every scratch on that car. And so I would be so anxious of parking in parking lots, and Tracy would see this. I'd park across 2 parking spots so somebody couldn't park close to me. Or I'd be pulling into a parking lot, and they'd be so close to the line, and I'd be like, what? There's lines painted on the street for a reason. And Tracy, being the saint that she is over there, well, maybe the person before them parked too close, and so they just didn't want to get too close to them. Maybe it's not their fault. And I'm like, there's lines painted. Leave me alone. Because I didn't want people to get close to me. They weren't doing this. They were driving some beater. Their car didn't matter. My car is what mattered, right? But it created so much anxiety. This thing that I thought I would make me happy and fulfill these anxieties now made me more anxious every time I went somewhere, because heaven forbid if somebody had done something to it, I'd have probably went to jail, right? So something that should be causing me less anxiety is now creating 10 times more anxiety that wasn't even there in the first place. And that's what they're saying is you think that having something new, so then you get the new iPhone. How many of y'all have gotten the new iPhone and you leave the plastic thing on the screen for the first couple days and you're like, I don't want to take it off. I can't take it off because I'm going to get it dirty. Right? Or you get that new phone, like when you first get the new phone, it's like, oh, let me go set it down on the table. And then, after you've had your phone for a while, you're sitting here like, here you go. Like seriously, I mean, tell me that's not true. Is that not very accurate? You get that new thing and you're like, ooh, super careful, super careful, super careful. And then you start getting to the point and you drop it and you're like, crap, it didn't break. I was hoping it would. Right? Seriously, tell me that I'm wrong. And so we think that we can buffer our fears with stuff. That if we get this new thing, I won't be worried about this. If I get this new thing, I won't have to stress about this over here. And in all actuality, it creates more stress. It creates more anxiety. And it won't solve anxieties today. It only amplifies them. And then the second argument to that is that you can somehow save money and you can plan and operate in a way that your future is secure. You say, I'm going to save up money. I'm going to work all summer long. I'm going to do this and do this and do this. So during the school year, I'm set, right? We think that we can, as long as we can get all these things, where's the trust in God to provide? You're thinking, I have to do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. There's nothing wrong with being prepared as long as it doesn't consume you. Does that make sense? Like you don't want it to own you and it be who you are. And so you do those things and you get to the point that if we need to be real honest about this, on top of money being really dangerous and our heart being deceptive and the love of money deadly, we see what starts to happen here in verse 4. Behold, the wages of your laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back against fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have flattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. So I'm guessing some of y'all right here are saying, okay, like, hey, Nathan, give me a break. Are you trying to tell me that I'm going to kill somebody? How many of y'all, show of hands, how many of y'all like murder mystery kind of movies or TV shows, or like the criminal TV shows like the Law and Orders and stuff like that, right? 9 times out of 10, it's the spouse who killed them in order to collect the insurance money, is it not? Think about it. This love of money can cause us to do stupid things. Because almost all crime is based upon money. almost all crime is based upon money. And the love of it and wanting more of it. And the crazy part is, it's normally the people that have tons of money that just feel like they need more. They have to have more, and it causes them to commit insurance fraud. Or these day traders that do the boiling rooms and stuff like that, that they feel like they need more because it consumes them. And it causes them to do things. And by nature, through creation, we're eternal beings. Keep that in mind. We're either going to live out our days in this glorious heaven that God has created and God has designed us to be in, or we are going to spend the rest of our days facing the wrath of God in hell. We are eternal beings. Keep that in mind. Regardless, some people think, well, I have eternal life. No, we all have eternal life. It's a matter of which door you're going to go through when you check out of this life. So we're eternal beings, and we're trying to fill ourselves with something that's temporary, right? We are eternal, so temporary can never satisfy. That's ultimately why we're never quite satisfied. We want more. We are created as beings that are forever, eternal. That iPhone is going to die. It's going to break. That car that you have to have, it's going to be obsolete in 10 years. You can't even buy parts for it. And we're trying to fill ourselves with all of these things that we think are going to satisfy us. And that's what's toxic about it. It doesn't work that way. But 1 Timothy 6 is going to tell us, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. So James is telling Nathan, the guy that is always shopping for cars online that I can't afford, or I get on Amazon and I'm like, hey, what can I look up on Amazon? No intention of buying anything. But James is telling me, hey, homeboy, as long as you have pants and a burrito, you should be content. You should be happy with that. That's all you need. If you're clothed and you have nourishment, that's it. You should be content with just that. And that's not where we are as humans. And I'm telling you right now, that's not where I am. Once again, don't look at me like I'm a horrible person and don't start judging me, because y'all are sitting in those same seats, right? James is telling us as long as we have food and clothing, with these things, to be content. Just those things, not everything else. Just those things. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. So those that are, most of us desire, how many of y'all want to be wealthy someday, right? Don't lie, right? You want to be maybe not wealthy, but comfortable, right? You don't want to have to worry about going out to dinner or something like that. But we're trying to fill ourselves with all these temporary things. And in our eyes, that's how we judge wealth. Do you look at, one of your friends, and your friends that all of a sudden they get the new iPhone every single time it comes out, and it doesn't surprise you when they say they got a new one, right? Right? We all have those people in our life. But those who desire rich fall into temptation. There's a difference between wanting to do good for yourself and wanting to be comfortable and consuming yourself and becoming rich and obtaining possessions, things that you can't even take with you. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. So many times where, culture tells us, well, if you have this, you'll be cool. If you have this clothing, you'll be accepted. Guys, if you drive this kind of a truck, girls are going to love you. That's what culture tells us, and that we need these things. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be point blank. You are a fool if you think that those 360 times a day that you are shoved an ad down your throat, whether it be on social media, whether it be on a billboard, whether it be on whatever, doesn't affect you, you're a fool, because it does. And so you have to fight that. You have to realize that there's more to life than those temporary things. There's more to, all of this stuff. You're not wearing the clothes that you're wearing most of the time because you're like, oh, they're comfortable. No, we're discipled. The world disciples us to say, if you're going to fit in with this group of people, you have to do this. If you're going to fit in with this group of people, you have to do this. If you're going to marry this type of girl, you have to have this much money. You have to buy this big ring if you want to do that. That's what culture tells us. But how does the gospel deliver us from that? Well, how can we use the good news of Christ to get through that love of money? And I think it does it on two fronts. And first off, the whole basis of the gospel is rooted in the generosity of God. Think about it. God sent his sinless son to come to earth to die for the sin of all mankind. And what is his response to his son going and dying? Giving us the opportunity for redemption. Not only is he giving his son to pay a debt that we could never pay, his exact response to that is to immediately turn around and give us the opportunity to see mercy, to see grace. So the whole basis of the gospel is rooted in the fact that God is this generous being in the first place. And so I'm primarily a son of God. Yes, I might be a student pastor. I might be a husband. I might be a father. I might be a great worker. But when all of that falls apart, when the world stops, when my whole world is rocked, my primary identity is I'm a son of God because of God's generosity. So when all those other things that were important begin to fall apart, I'm still identified as a son of God, a child of God. I've been adopted into that family. And the second thing is, not only am I adopted into this family and I'm part of this, but I'm invited to be a part of something that is so much bigger than me. God is on a mission, and we have been invited into that mission. We have not just been saved from, but we've been saved to. Does that make sense? You're not just being saved, like here, you don't have to go to hell anymore, but we're using you for a mission over here. We have a plan for you. We're going to use you in a way that you would never imagine. As a culture, we're kind of drawn to superhero movies, right? Right now, there's always a new Marvel's movie coming out, right? We're drawn to this type of a movie. And it actually kind of shows that deep down inside us, we do value this like selfless sacrifice, right? We value that. We think it's awesome. We think it's great. Unfortunately, many times these are values that we look at, but our mind and our wallet and our bank account don't agree with. We say we like the idea of this selfless sacrifice with one common goal, as long as it's not me. I'm okay with laying down one's life to save this person as long as it's Captain America and it's not me. And so we like the idea of it as long as we're not the one that has to sacrifice. Culture tells us it's all about me, 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 me. It's what I want, it's what I desire, it's what's important to me, and everything else doesn't matter. And so it's that sad state of affair that reveals the toxicity in our culture. That tells us that, that's what we are. I mean, that's what we're breathing in every single day. Media is pushing down our throat, is that it's all about you. It's your body. It's your this. It's all about what you want. And so just sit back and the government's going to throw money at you, right? I'm not going political on you or anything like that, but that's what we're being taught. And so one of the first things I think we need to do is we need to grow in financial wisdom. Grow in financial wisdom. And let's be honest, okay? Most of you, and not all of you have like checking accounts or anything like that, but let's be honest, most of y'all have no earthly idea how to balance a checkbook. Typically, Tracy balances ours and then just yells at me. But most of y'all don't even know how to balance a checkbook. And so, and think about this. When you get to a point in your life, like this point in your life, when you can actually see what's going on, and most of y'all know where your family stands on whatever financial level or whatever, what you didn't see is how did they get there? Maybe they're in a bad spot right now, and it's because of poor decisions they made. Maybe they're in a great, comfortable position right now, and it's because of hard work and dedication that got them there. But what we hear on repeat is we have those kids that graduate college, they get into their first job, they're late 20s, early 30s, and they think, well, my parents were right here, so that's where life is supposed to be. Well, no, they were there in their 40s. They weren't there in their 30s. You just think that it's supposed to get right up there right away, and it doesn't work that way. You have to grow in financial wisdom. It's not just that's how life is, unless you're a trust fund baby. And then that's how life is, right? You spend your day worrying about how can I spend my money, right? Any of y'all have that problem? Because if so, we'll talk after this, right? No? Darn. Right? But not only do we have to grow in financial wisdom, but we have to pursue contentment. 365 days, or 360 times a day, you are being fed an ad of some kind. We were talking about this. Wraps on vehicles, billboards, signage, social media, YouTube, whatever, you're seeing some type of an ad that is trying to lure you into saying, I need that. Oh, I want that. Oh, that'd be nice. Oh, I want to go there. Whatever it might be, 360 times a day on average, you're being fed some type of an ad. And so being content with what you have does not come naturally. It's something you have to pursue. You have to say, you know what? I already have an iPhone. I don't need the new one. Because I know other people that might not have it. I love what I already have. I don't need to do this. And I think one of the biggest ways to do this is you have to remember that nothing you have is yours in the first place. Everything you have has been given to you in one way or another. It's because God has blessed you. He has allowed you to have that. Everything that I have, which isn't very much, is because God blessed me. But as a culture, especially your generation, you're entitled, right? You feel like you're owed this. We hear right now all the time is we're owed a free education. We're owed this. We're owed that. Instead of being content with what God has already blessed us with. And that pursuing contentment is not something that you just do once. Okay, I'm good. No, that is a constant struggle, a constant battle that is ongoing, right? So you have to pursue it. It's kind of like marriage. Trace and I have been doing a study, and we're getting ready to reboot it actually this week. And it's called, we each have our own book, and it's called Husband in Pursuit and Wife in Pursuit. You know, when you start dating, you will do whatever you can to impress that young lady. Because remember, very first study we ever did, we came to the conclusion that guys are stupid and girls are crazy, right? Very first study I ever did with y'all. So guys, you will do whatever you can to make that young lady like you. And then you get married and you're like, I got the prize. I'm good. Doesn't work that way. It's what most guys do. You have to constantly be pursuing that young lady. Same way of this isn't something that you get to a point and you're like, I'm good. Will it get easier? Yeah, absolutely. But it's something you constantly are going to pursue. And then finally, you have to be generous. You have to be generous. And you might say, I don't have enough money to be generous. Yeah, you do. It's little things. It's little things. Putting a dollar bill in a drink machine and getting a drink for, a little kid that's standing by, watching you get your drink. Walking by one of the vending machines and you see the kid sitting there staring at the vending machine and just like drop a quarter in there. I used to do that every so often. I'd keep a quarter in my pocket, and I used to go through in like the vending machines, like the bubblegum machines and stuff like that. I'd put a quarter in like each one of them, and then just leave. And some kid would come up and be like, oh, there's already a quarter there, and they'd turn the knob, and they're all excited, right? It's little things. Just be creative about it, and it's that kind of a thing that disciples you, and it can generate this gladness in your life. If you've never had the opportunity to be generous and to bless somebody, you have no earthly idea what it feels like. It is one of the greatest feelings in the world. But I want to caution you on not being generous. I told y'all that this is something that kind of hit home with me recently. And I know now that God was teaching me a lesson. And I still haven't quite got over it yet. Literally last night, I was studying for this. Tracy didn't know what the lesson. A lot of times I don't really talk to Tracy a whole lot about what the lesson is. I want her to kind of come into it cold as well, so it'll help generate some questions and stuff like that. But literally last night, we took Micah and Sophia. We hadn't went out as a family and ate dinner. I don't think we'd done it since the coronavirus, other than little fast food places here or there. So we went and sat down at, I even forget what it's called. It used to be Miyabi's down in Murrells Inlet. And we sat down on the table, and there were three, I would say probably high school or maybe just graduated kids from Florence that were down for the weekend. They were sitting, and I looked at Tracy, and I don't want y'all to think any less of Tracy because I ultimately didn't make the decision. When I should have overrode it, but I looked at Tracy and said, I can't tell you why. And this is my exact words. I can't explain it, but something is telling me to pay for their meal. I don't know why. First off, Tracy and I had no business really going there because we didn't have the extra money, and that place ain't cheap. It really isn't. But I was like, something is tugging at me, and Tracy's like, we don't have the money, we can't. And I literally took about 3 bites of my food. I was sick at my stomach. I couldn't eat. Couldn't eat. Tracy got sick at her stomach later on. Couldn't eat. I ended up not paying for their meal. And I can't, to this day, I can't explain to you why until getting into this. I'm like, okay. I don't know what the story was. I don't know. Maybe they had car trouble. Maybe me paying for their meal, they'd be like, oh, well, thanks. And I could have been like, hey, actually, I'm a pastor at a local church here. Let me talk to you. You never know. But I didn't do it. And that's a scary place to be in. You know, find ways to be generous. And it doesn't have to be, because that would have tacked on a chunk of change to our bill. And we would have had to figure it out later, right? Find out who wasn't getting paid at the end of the month. Whatever it ended up being, right? But find little ways to be generous. It's not always about money either. Maybe it's just helping people. Instead of your parents having to pay somebody $20 to come cut the grass, go get the daggum lawnmower and go cut the grass. Maybe you borrow your mom's car and you bring it back with a full tank. You know, little things like that, instead of saying, okay, we're going to play gas tank roulette here and see who it ends up on, and that person's going to have to fill it up, and I'm going to make sure that it's not me, right? Be generous. I love how you say that, Shane, because anytime we go someplace and Tracy's like, let's take my car. Oh, I wonder why you want to take your car. Yeah, never fails. And here's the best part, is if she does take time out of her day to stop and put gas in it, she won't fill it up because she don't want to stand there that long. I don't want to hear it. I sent the student leadership team several videos of me filling up the excursion the other day as it was rounding $50, rounding $60, rounding $70. I think it stopped at like 74, something like that. And I had a quarter of a tank of fuel. But anywho, so be generous. Find a way to be generous. So real quick, I want to, because we're getting out here in like 10 minutes. So those of you that did the fill in the blanks, money is dangerous. The heart is deceptive. The love of money is only the can deliver us from this. The lie that we give our lives is that we need more of what we actually already have. Money is so dangerous because you have trusted in the wrong thing. Your wallet is a gracious gift from God to help you understand what's actually going on in you. We use wealth to kind of create safety and as a shield to buffer us from life's anxiety. Almost all crime is built upon money. We are eternal, so the temporary can never satisfy. The whole basis of the gospel is rooted in the generosity of God. We've not just been saved from, we've been saved to. We need to grow in financial wisdom. We have to pursue contentment, and we need to be generous, right? So what was your first reaction when this is the part where you get to talk, right? So what was your first reaction when you realized we'll talk about money in this session? Okay.
You're going to show me what I should spend my money on and what I should save it on.
Yeah. Okay. Some of y'all on the leadership team, I kind of told you that it was about money. Did you think it was going to go the direction that it went tonight? Kind of had an idea? Why do you think that you reacted that way? Did you already have some type of an understanding about how you felt about money and the dangers of money? Right? We did that generation change study with Dave Ramsey. I guess it's been about a year and a half ago now. Why do you think money is a sensitive subject for most people? That pretty much nails it. They don't want to be told what they can and cannot do with it, right? I think there's some guilt in there too. Because there's a lot of people I know that got where they're at because somebody else helped them out, but yet they're not turning around and paying it forward. True story, when I was opening my cabinet shop, when I decided that I was going to quit my job to come be a volunteer here, and I'm like, hey, but I need to do something on the side to make some money because Tracy doesn't like ramen noodles, and we need to be able to have at least chicken. I needed to buy like a trailer to pull, to put, some of my equipment in, to go to job sites and stuff like that. And I ran into a guy that I knew, hadn't talked to him in years. He overheard me talking about the fact that I was going to buy a trailer. He said, well, I got something that could help you. And he gave me a 1987 P30 step van. It looked like a UPS van is what it is, but it was white instead of brown. Jordan, did you ever see that thing? I drove it here a couple of times. It was a bread truck is what it was, essentially. Gave it to me. I had to do a little bit of work to it. I used that thing for about a year or so with the business. It was all kinds of fun. I actually loved that truck. I wish I would have never got rid of that thing. And then I ended up selling that truck to buy the trailer that I needed. I sold that truck for the exact amount of money to go buy a brand new trailer. That truck was given to me. And you know what I looked at him, I was like, Freddie, are you sure? Because I had some money set aside to buy a trailer. I didn't want to spend a lot of money, but I had some money set aside. I said, are you sure? And he looked at me, he said, when I lived in Ohio, he said, I started a carpentry business doing trim. And I was struggling to get started, and a guy down the road gave me a bunch of tools when he retired. I would have never been successful if that guy hadn't helped me out. He said, and I want to turn around and pay it forward. He gave me the truck. I called him before I sold it, and I told him, I was like, look, I got a guy that wants to buy, actually turned it into a food truck. I got a guy that wants to buy it, and I can take that money and use a trailer because right now what I'm doing, a trailer is going to benefit me more than that big van would. Because I could pull the trailer with my truck, and the other one had a big old 454 in it and got no gas mileage. It was, it was easier to get in and out with a trailer, and if I had to go long distances, I was good. He's like, absolutely, I gave it to you. He's like, I don't want anything in return for it. I did what. And that step of generosity made a world of a difference. He paid it forward, right? And so many of us don't want to be told what to do with our money. And so that's why a lot of people are very sensitive about money. All right, and then recapping James 5, 1 through 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you, and you will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed in your field, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You've lived on earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have flattened your hearts in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. How would you describe the emotional tone of these verses? Come on. I know y'all haven't been in class in like 4 months, 5 months. Come on. But how would you describe that? How is it being portrayed? If you're reading this to yourself, how is James talking to you? Is he buttering you up?
It's almost like, man,
Yeah.
these words like slaughter. I don't even know if that was actually on there.
Yeah, slaughter's in there.
Flatten, and it's just like, it just makes you think like, if you thought money was bad, like this is,
Yeah.
it's just telling you, like you said, how dangerous it really is, how we put it on a pedestal sometimes, what God really thinks of it.
Yeah, and James is like, he's getting the point across. He's not holding any punches. He's just telling you flat out how it is. And I think the second part of that is, why do you think this message calls for such emotion, is because money is something we don't want to talk about. We don't want to be told how we can do what we can and cannot do with it. And James is just telling you flat out, look, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Point blank. End of discussion. There's no gray area here. If this is what you do, then this is what will come of it. And I think sometimes, I'm the kind of person I'd rather somebody just tell me flat out how it is. Like the person that comes up to me and be like, well, let me kind of butter you up a little bit before I kind of break you right down. I see right through that, and I'm like, just tell me what you came here to complain about so we can move on with that. You don't need to fluff all of this fake stuff up for me. Just tell me how I messed up and let's move on. Like Tracy will do that. Tracy will be like, so you did really good at this and dinner was really good at this. And I'm like, okay, what did I do? Just tell me, what is it? Just tell me what I did so we can move on, right? And that's what James is doing. James is just, this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. Money is dangerous. What is the distinction between money being dangerous and money being bad? It can still be used for good. Money being dangerous is when, like I said, when we use the analogy of comparing it to fire. Fire's good. It keeps you warm. It lets you cook things. It can also burn down your house if you don't control it. Money's the same way. Money can be great. You can use it to feed your family and keep your family warm, but it can also destroy your family. The heart is deceptive. Why is this true not only for money, but also in other areas of our life? Yeah. Culture tells us to follow what your heart wants, right? And we see where that's getting in Hollywood, right? That works out so great, doesn't it? The love of money is deadly. Why is this discontentment toxic for our soul? How is the fact that being discontent just toxic? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like you're never happy. It's running on a treadmill. It's that hamster wheel. You're constantly wanting more and more and more and more and more, and you can't. There's never a finish line. I use that analogy this week. It's like you're running, and just when you think you're almost at that finish line, Satan picks up that flag, and he steps back another mile and puts it back down again. Nope. You thought this was going to get you happy. This was going to get you joy. Not today. Right? Only the gospel can deliver us. How do we find contentment in the gospel? How do we find generosity in the heart of the gospel? I feel like Jamie Lynn hasn't said anything all night. No, how do we find generosity in the gospel? No, you don't have to look far at all. God sent his son, his sinless son, to earth to live among men, to die for your sins, for the sins of the entire world. And what is God's response to sending his son to die for our sins? To once again reach his hand out and say, here's your opportunity. Here's your chance. Not only am I going to send my son to die for your sins, but I'm going to give you a chance to cash in on it. And it's as simple as that. I mean, that's the gospel in a nutshell right there. I mean, it's that simple, right? And so we find generosity throughout the gospel. And yes, does that mean that we're not going to want things? No, absolutely not. Is it okay to want things? Yeah. Is it okay to have nice things? Y'all are allowed to answer. Is it okay to have nice things? Yeah. You can have a lot of nice things. As long as you don't let it consume you. As long as it's not what you let that car that you drive is what defines you. Are you defined by what you're driving or what neighborhood you're going to build your house in or what clothes you're wearing? Or do you let your generosity, because of the generosity you've been shown, define you? That's where you have to land. And this is a hard one. And the reason I told many of y'all I was excited about this is because this one really does hit home for me. Because I am all the time on Facebook Marketplace looking for something else. My saying recently is, Tristan, I just want a toy. I just want a toy. Whether it be a boat or a motorcycle or a Jeep or a Mustang, I just want a toy. And I tell her this all the time. Most of the time I live vicariously through my son because I'm like, ooh, he wants a Nintendo Switch, you know? He wants this, and I can get it for him. It's not me wanting it, it's him, right? But this one hits home for me because it makes me think, it's like, where is my heart? When I left Advance to come do this, I was right here. I gave it all up. I sold the boat, sold the motorcycle, sold it all, and I was sold out. But now I'm kind of starting to get complacent a little bit and say, okay, well, things are getting better. God's blessing me over here. And is there anything wrong with as God's blessing me, as long as I'm still continuing to be generous to get a toy? No, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as I don't let it define me. Define me.
You brought up a point I was just thinking about. I mean, money, you use it to buy things, obviously. But if you had to, and somebody came up to you, would you leave everything behind for God? Are you willing to do that? So the stuff that you purchase with your money, you got to be able to walk away with it, away from it if you ask to. That's pretty tough to do. Think of the stuff you got at home that you hold dear, that you bought. You worked hard for your money, you purchased it. If God came to you today and said, you leave that behind, come on, would you do it?
We all would want to say that, yeah, sure. But until you're in those shoes, nobody else can come up to you and tell you that, man, you're sold out for God. They can say it, but you're the one that knows it. So, well, I'm going to let Miss Tracy close us, or actually, Mr. Shane, you mind closing us in a word of prayer real quick? And then we are going to be dismissed, and I'll see y'all tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock we're doing our counterculture series. So it's going to get all kinds of fun tomorrow morning. So let's pray.
Dear Heavenly Father,